Hello, everyone. This is Ranger Rob, and welcome to the Ranger Rob Country Living Podcast. And tonight's a very special night tonight because we have Caleb, and see if I say this, Howerton, right? Howerton? All right. So you're the president of Idaho Pasture Pig Breed Association. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, before we get going with you, I want to make sure we introduce our other hosts. I have Debbie Sternberg here today. John's on a mission to get rid of some of his some pig meat. They just slaughtered about 4 pigs over the weekend, so he's inundated with a lot of meat. So he's got to get delivered over to Sandy, Oregon. And then I have Aimee here from DragonFly Farms, and both of these gals here are going to get their first Idaho Pasture Pig feeder this year. So I think John and Debbie are getting 2 of them, and Amy's getting 1. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. So I want to start the show out. First of all, thank you very much for showing up to our podcast, and we didn't even have to bribe you.
It does not take much to get me to talk about IPPs. So
Well,
my wife wishes
excited.
it was the other way around, but
So we're actually counting on you to help us get educated on what Idaho pasture pigs are. So you'll probably hear us a lot. Let me get my little things going here. You probably hear us say IPP a lot, but it's Idaho Pasture Pigs. And the association that you're acquainted with, or that you're a president of, is the Idaho Pasture Pig Breed Association. And so we're going to talk about IPPBA, which is what your organization is first, and so you can tell us about it. And then we're going to switch gears because you're a 13-year pig farmer. And have you had IPPs the whole time, or did you switch?
oh gosh, no. We used to raise a lot of different things. So we've been farming for 13 years. Did not have pigs the whole time. My wife has actually had pigs about that whole time. She's probably been farming technically longer than me, although it was always just little. Her parents always had some chickens and always had some pigs and stuff.
Gotcha.
Always done horses.
So how long have you been affiliated with IPP pigs?
About 4.5, 5 years now, maybe.
Awesome. So
That
we're
was-
hoping to learn some stuff from you today.
Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot over the years.
She's in 1 year. I can't believe what I've gained, but I've got a lot more to go. So first of all, let's start this conversation with, first of all, thank you so much for being here. And I want to talk to you about what the association is all about. And then we're going to switch gears. I want to make sure you guys understand that he's a representative of IPPBA. However, later on when we talk about the pigs in general, we're just talking as farmers because also he raises IPP pigs. So, but first of all, let's talk about IPPBA, which is Idaho Pasture Pigs Breed Association. And my first question is, what is that?
Yeah, so the IPPBA is honestly just a community of growers that raise IPPs and want to see the breed move forwards. So when I got into the breed, honestly, all there really was one Facebook page, which was pretty awesomely managed. Jody does a fantastic job, but it was also at a time when there hadn't been as much stuff put on. The breed was pretty small still back then. This was back in 2017, 2018, and the breed's only been around since about 2007. So it had been a bit loose. There wasn't as much information out. And so we really were kind of like, we need something that puts out more education material and kind of helps get everybody together. Because the registry it's a privately owned organization, which I know some people have a beef with, but honestly, it's not like Jody makes any money on it. Jody puts her heart and soul into it. So
and who's Jody? Who's Jody? By the way,
Jody is the owner of the registry for Idaho Pasture
okay.
Pigs.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
All right, that helps.
Yeah, sorry for most people that don't. Sometimes I forget because our community really is pretty small. Like there are more IPPs than there are red wattle pigs, but we're still a really small breed. And especially since I've been around since we were really, really small, like 100-something registered breeders. to now there's 4-ish or 500 maybe. I may be wrong on that, but last I looked, it was like 380, 390, and it had just been continuing to shoot. So yeah, we noticed a point where it was like, man, there's not the education out there for everybody because there's just no way for one family to do that and really put that out. So the community just wanted to come together and help create this opportunity for education and to try to bring everybody together off of Facebook. We do have the Facebook page that we're pretty active on, but with Facebook not allowing you to sell livestock on Facebook and shutting down Facebook groups for that kind of stuff, there was always the concern that like there's one Facebook group for IPPs, and should it ever get removed, like I was on some Dexter groups and some rabbit groups that just got removed, and that's not a big deal because there's like 1,000 of them, but there's one IPP group and that's where everybody gets together. So it was kind of like super stressful. So by forming the association, there's now 3 or 4 different IPP Facebook groups. We've got the website for the IPPBA that's got a chat forum on it. It's not used a ton right now, but fingers crossed people hear this and start hopping on there. I'd love that. And then we do shows at least once a year. When we could squeeze in a virtual, we've done that. We're starting to do some crowd. I'm blanking on the name of it. It's crowd something.
Sourcing, funding?
Yeah. Well, no, it's
Sounds
Crowdcast. No, Crowdcast. So it's a video platform. So we can. We just had one the other night with Kirsten Boyer and Joe Chestnut, and they got to talking about IPPs on there, and that was awesome. That's really what the IPP is all about, is creating that community and that education resource for breeders. Yeah. So that's. I mean, honestly, that's all the IPPBA is in a nutshell. So
when was it founded?
It was actually founded in 2021. So last year,
Oh, it's really new.
I think our legal paperwork was done in August. So we're 1 year old now. Oh my gosh, we missed that. We should have made a Facebook post or something.
Congrats.
So
yeah.
I'm fairly new. I'm only 1 year into IPP pigs.
Okay.
And so so I really counted on some of the new acquaintances I got when I first got started, like Steve Sparks and also Lori and Hayes from Obsidian Farms were fantastic people in Redmond, Oregon. And as time has gone on, as a breeder, we have obviously been watching our videos. We've got piglets. So now we're into the realm of breeders or feeders. And so
a tough one.
Whole new questions come up. And so my next question is, and I'll tell everybody I'm a proud member of the new the IPPBA group because of these questions I have today. I've talked to Caleb and Steve Sparks and Lori and Hayes quite a bit for all kinds of recommendations and being mentors to us. And so having a little bit more mentoring has been crucial to us. And what we're learning, we're passing on to people like John and Debbie and Amy here on the show here. And so my question is, staying with the subject of IPPBA, why should someone join it?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a lot of little benefits here and there to becoming a member of the association. Honestly, the biggest is just knowing that you're helping support the community. Like, that's why we do it. Me and everyone else on the board dump tons and tons of volunteer hours into trying to make this work. So knowing that you're helping to support that community and helping to bring our breed into the future and make it all that we know it can be. But, there's got to be perks because there's a $50 a year fee to help cover all the expenses that we do. So we want to make sure that that's worth it for everybody. That's definitely something my wife and I think about anytime we join an association of some sort is what do we get out of it. So being a part of the IPPBA, you get free admittance to any of our live shows that we do and our virtual shows, which that's not too much. That's $10 a show. So like that covers a little bit, but we'd love to see you there. Then you also get member only access to a bunch of different stuff on our website. So that forum that I talked about on the website, only members can comment and post on that. Anybody can go through and read all the comments on there and read the posts, but only members can comment on it. There's also a classified section on the IPPBA website. We can't technically sell pigs on Facebook. So, we do on the Facebook group have that rule of no obvious sales of livestock. Everybody's got to get creative with it. But that restricts some wording, to be able to really push, what's so great about your pig or location or whatever. On the classified section, you can go hog wild, post pictures like we like to see, post pedigrees. So there's that, and that's a members only thing. Anybody can access and look at it, so anybody could buy your pig. They don't have to be a member to do so, but only members can post on there. And then all of our shows that we do and all of the crowdcasts that we do, those are all recorded. All the talks at the shows and everything. So we record those and we put them up on the website behind a members only paywall. So say that, you couldn't make it to the show in person, which a lot of people can't. I mean, that's a big deal to try to travel all the way across the country with or without pigs, right? But if you're a member, you just hop on the website afterwards as soon as they're uploaded and you can watch the whole talk. We hope to see you in person to build that community, but, if you can't, you can just hop on there and watch all the talks. Or if you're like, you went to the show and you couldn't remember what got said, you just hop on the website later on and you can rewatch that over and over and over. Let's see, there are so many little things that we continue to offer through this. The crowdcast stuff that we've started to do more. So those are, this first one we just did, pro bono, no issue, no charge. But going forwards, there will be a minor fee for non-members to watch those and sign up for. It's not much. I don't remember. We've been discussing some different prices, somewhere between $5 and $15. But for a member, they're free. So as a member, you just log on and watch any of the talks. We're going to do at least 1 to 2 of those a month. And we're Laura Tome up there in Washington. She's our scribe, and she's been the head of the whole crowdcast thing. I appreciate all the hard work she's put into that, but she's really racking up some really cool topics to coming forward. So I'm super excited to see all these as they start rolling out. Like I said, the first one just did, but she's got some awesome ones lined up. So those are all perks to being a member. Your farm is listed on our website as a member. I've got to hop on and get yours since you just signed up. I've got to get your stuff added to the website still, but anybody can hop on there. I
wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah. Well, like I said, with the poor rural internet, and I've got to drive into town to go to a coffee shop. We actually just canceled our home internet because it was so bad. We're waiting for fiber. Fiber is just up the road. So,
nice.
But until then, I have to drive into a coffee shop to do all computer work. This works because I'm using my phone. So
yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have to be a breeder to join the association?
Yes. So there are only 2 requirements to be a member of the IPPBA. Own a registered IPP and have you have to be able to prove that by sending it when you submit your form to be a member. You have to submit a picture of the back of your registration. They'll look like this when you get one. The back of it will. That's the registration. And it'll have your name on it in the top corner. And so that's it. That just proves that, unless, I guess somebody could try to fake one of these, but that seems like a silly thing to fake.
You never know around here.
Right. Well, and then you have to pay $50. So that's the other one, is that you pay your annual dues.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. Own an IPP and pay the dues every year. And that's it.
A registered IPP, correct?
Yeah, registered IPP, which we can go into that later. I just got clued in on a phone call from a big chat thread about that earlier with non-registered IPPs. So on a bunch of stuff happening fun. So yeah, we can talk about that later if you want. But
yeah. By the way, before I forget, I put a link in our description where you can get to the IPPBA organization website, and I also put a link to your farm and your Facebook page on your farm. So
thank you.
Any other big things about IPPBA that I may have forgotten to ask before I switch gears here a little bit?
Yeah, so we're keep an eye out for all the crowdcast stuff that's starting to come out, and then keep an eye out for our show notification or show information that's about to be coming out. Julie Wu she just came on as a new board member for our show and expo superintendent, and she has been killing it with lining out stuff for our upcoming show. We are looking at dates in June-ish. That's when our last 2 shows have been, was around the 10th through 12th of June, and it's worked pretty good. So we're going to try for that this next year. And we're looking at Springfield, Missouri as a location. That way we're more centrally located. Our last 2 shows have been out in Tremonton, Utah, and Croton, Ohio. So we hit the 2 other sides of the country. So we figure Springfield will allow people that couldn't really make it to either of those to make it to the center. And you'd get to see me at the show because I'll definitely I've made it to the other 2, but I'll definitely make it to this one because I live here. So that's easy.
Nice.
But yeah, so keep an eye out for all the show info coming up and keep an eye out for all those crowdcasts. That's the biggest stuff for the IPPBA I can think of right now.
Awesome. Now, I guess what the biggest suggest to people is this is the breed association, but there's also what they call the IPP registration organization. They're the ones that actually keep track of, especially if you're a breeder, if you got registered. So there is different forms of the IPP groups. This one's more focused on the breeders. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually, I'm really glad you brought that up because that is, so I'm the one who does most of the answering for websites and emails and stuff like that we get. And that is probably the number one thing we get. As I'm so happy that Steve came on because now I can pass all those on to Steve. Steve is our registry liaison on the board, Steve Sparks. Mm-hmm. So Steve is also a member of the advisory board for the registry. And so his role with ours is to help work together to make sure we mesh well. Over the years, there's been some stuff that there didn't need to be. We're 2 organizations with the same goals. We just want to see this breed succeed. But they are 2 completely separate organizations. If you have anything, if it involves this piece of paper at all, that is the registry. We do have a COI calculator on the website that can help you with one of these. But really, if you have a question regarding this, then email the registry, and that'll be, you'd be talking with Jody. Anything at all involving paperwork, transfer of pigs, anything like that, that's all the registry. They're a completely separate thing. We're just education and community building, and that is it. So
now
if you have,
use the terminology for some of us new folks. What's COI mean?
COI is coefficient of inbreeding. So coefficient of inbreeding is important for all breeds. I first started learning about it when I've got a degree in animal science, so learned it in college. And people kind of act like it's a new big thing. It is really important because we're such a young breed. You know, our gene pool's not that large yet, but that's really important for all breeds in general. It's a big issue for Holsteins right now. But that coefficient of inbreeding just measures how closely related 2 individuals are, so that we can kind of, because you look at that and it's just honestly, for newbies, that's a very complicated thing to start looking at. You've got the names of everything, and on a typical registry paperwork, you've got 3 letters in the front, and that's going to be the farm prefix, and then the line name of the pig, followed by a letter, and then a series of numbers. And that line name is the same working all the way back on the maternal line, and then the paternal line will also have a line going all the way back. So you're going to see on a piece of paper, Triton, or Jody, or Bandit, like working all the way back. And so people get confused as to, well, are these pigs related or not? And because you could have one that has all the same names on a piece of paper and then not actually be that related at all, not within the past 4 or 5 generations. But plugging it into a COI calculator or manually doing it by hand, so we all did for a long time there till I had a friend do the coding for the website for us to get one up, and now the registry's got one on the back end that pulls from the herd book, which is super awesome. The only 2 differences between those is that the calculator on the IPPBA website, anyone can access and use. You do have to type everything in. There is a cheat on there to be able to save your pedigree, so you only have to type it in once. Yeah. But with that, you can do hypothetical pairings. So you can match up, you can think in your head like, oh, I want to save back a gilt from this litter, and I want to save back a boar from that litter to be able to sell a breeding pair to someone. is that going to have a good COI? So below 3 to 5%, or is it going to be higher than that? And with the registry one, you don't have to type anything in at all except search the animal's name, but it only works for pigs that are already registered. So you can't do those hypothetical ones. You can just do, okay, I have a boar standing out in the field or a piglet that I just bought that is already registered, and compare it to another one that's already registered, and that'll give you that. And you have to be, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So when you register these pigs, that's where you get the number to use? Is that registry?
Yep. Yeah, so like the one that I keep grabbing here, so the name of this pig is GTF Jody J1076. And so that's the number you would, or you'd plug that whole thing into the COI calculator to look up on the registry website. And I guess I could break this. So like,
and you would get that from the buyer, or do you do that yourself?
Yes. So that's actually a great question too for registering. So the owner of the pigs, the one selling the pigs, does all registering. So when you buy a piglet, you won't do anything. All you'll do is make sure that you have all your information to the breeder. And then within 4 to 6 weeks, as long as everything's going good, and the mail's not running behind or anything, then you'll receive one of these in the mail in a big old manila envelope. So
if I was to go buy a registered one, what would the breeder need?
So the breeder is going to need your name, your address, your phone number, an address where the pig will be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just a P.O. box or something, because that's pretty useless.
Right.
It's good to send your mail to. Like they will need one to send your mail to, but if you're buying a pig from across state lines, then they're going to have to also have a CVI, or certificate of vet inspection. So make sure that they have your address for where the pig will be, and preferably where your mail goes to at the same time, because the registry will need the mail one, so that they can send that to you. But really, it's just name, phone number, and address, and they can usually get everything done from there. If your farm already has a breeder prefix registered, then you can go ahead and give them that, and they'll plug that in too. If you would like an AKA, and also known as, put on your pig, you can give them that for the piglet then also. But most people want to get to know their piglet for a few days before they go giving it a name. But if you want, you can give that to them. I wait, and on our contracts that we put out to customers, it's in there, and we're agreed that I've got 30 days to do it, because I like to try to do them all at once versus trying to like hop on the computer and do one individual thing and then logging out and then coming back and doing it again. And most of my farrowings are pretty close together, so I can hit it within that 30 days. But yeah.
So for a clarification, just to make sure, like for example, we have piglets, and I've registered that I have a litter. However, I'm selling them as feeders, so they're not registered. And
so you won't have to do anything with that.
Right, and so we don't register a feeder pig. But if we're to buy one of our pigs as a breeder, I'm obligated to go in. Actually, I have to be the one to actually go in there and say, and pay the fees and the whole works to get you confirmation that you have a registered pig, and it's also within its breed line. And so
that fee is nothing. It's like
nothing.
$10.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to do registered dairy goats, and it was like $30-$40, and the membership was $100 something a year. So this is a no-brainer. Like, there is no, if you're selling a pig as breeding quality, there's no reason to not register it, because it costs $10 and 20 minutes on a website, maybe.
And the good thing about that is
a lot more than that.
No, the good thing about it is as the seller, I'm the one that actually goes in and registers them, because that keeps from any fraud problems or crossbreeding or anything like that. So I am actually, as a seller or actually the breeder, and the only one that can go in there and say your pig is a registered Idaho Pasture pig. So that's one of the precautions they have in the system, to not allow anybody just to put any kind of crazy kind of breed in there that may be mixed or something like that. So I do love that system.
That's a nice little redundancy.
So I think that I covered all that stuff. I know I got tons of questions, so I'm already 25 minutes into the show here. So we're gonna have you change hats. So
Okay,
you're now farmer Caleb. And so my first question is and I want to make sure that everything we talk about is we're talking about being farmers or being or raising IPPs on a personal basis. So we're totally away from the IPPBA group on these questions. We're having a discussion now, and so these are the opinions of us only.
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure that that's clarified to people. So from here out, because the IPP has a pretty neutral stance on a lot of the stuff that, as an individual breeder, you may have a pretty biased opinion on. I've got, same as any breeder that's been in this a while, I've got some pretty biased opinions, right, on things that I know have worked for me and opinions that I think is great for the breed. But from the standpoint of the IPPBA, it's a neutral organization because it's gonna hopefully outlive my tenure with the association, right? And so then I'll go back on and just continue to be Caleb who raises IPPs, and the association will continue to do its thing. So don't take anything from here on out as an official opinion of the IPPBA, just Caleb who's obsessed with IPPs and trying to make them be better. So
and slowly S3 too. So actually Elijah, some of the things I'm going to be asking will answer all those questions you're asking. So we're all eager to talk about IPPs here. So the first thing is you've been raising, now I've been here about 4.5 years of doing IPP pigs. And so I'm going to ask some basic questions, and even we may know the answer to some of these. I want to make sure that new people that are visiting us, which I'm seeing already in the comments, is what is an Idaho Pasture pig?
Yeah, so an Idaho Pasture pig is, first off, it is a breed. That's helpful because there's a ridiculous amount of contention on that, mainly because IPPs were initially bred from 3 different breed stock. So the foundations for them are Cooney, Old Line Duroc, and Old Line Berkshire. And like all breeds, no breed comes around from just like poofing out of thin air. You have to cross individual pigs to get what you want. And so that's what happened with IPPs. They did that for, oh gosh, I think it was, I could totally be wrong. So actually I don't want to throw out a number, but it was several generations until Shelley Ferris, who was the breed founder. Shelley and I am forgetting her husband's name, ex-husband's name, that founded the breed. So they bred them for several different generations, selecting towards a medium-sized grazing hog that still gets to a reasonable butcher weight of that 250-ish pounds in about 9 months. So the biggest kicker with those just being that they're a grazing hog, so they're not going to destroy your pasture. I've raised, oh my gosh, if I tried to list them all off, we've done Berkshire, Duroc, Red Wattle, Ossabaw Island, Yorkshire, and any combination of crosses in between. And, you know, we say to people that, like, IPPs don't root, and once in a while I'll see a picture from somebody that looks like, oh, they went out there and scuffed their boot onto the grass a bunch, or just turned over the top layer, you know, like you attempted to run a tiller across the soil on fresh sod, and so it doesn't really do much. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're rooting. And it's like, no, go raise a standard breed real quick and then come back to me. Because our old hogs, like, they would bury that, like, you know, 12+ inch long snout into the dirt and not look up for days. And it looked like I plowed a half-acre field with, you know, 3 hogs in a day. And these guys, I have, so now we just sent a bunch off to the processor over the last couple months here, but we've been running a feeding herd of about 20 on half-acre paddocks for 7 to 10 days. And there's still perfectly lush grass out there. If you don't believe me, go watch our YouTube videos on it. You can see my fields in every video. So,
well,
yeah.
Support. So, that's, yeah. So, what with that combination? I have to make sure with that combination of the breeds, which now is a entire breed, which is the IPP. What are you mentioned some of them, but what are some of the main qualities of why they even did that in the first place? Like, One is the quality of meat and things like that I want to talk about, and also what's the purpose of even developing a pig like this in the first place?
Honestly, because it didn't exist. It's something that needed to exist and didn't. And also, that's how I found them. Right? So we had raised all these other hogs. I love pigs, but I also love farming, and I love being regenerative with our land, and looking like I just plowed up my pretty nice fields out there with a diverse mix of grasses and forbs is not that sustainable, right? Unless I'm out there specifically trying to plant a garden. So we were like, well, I guess we'll try to breed a pasture type pig that grazes better, because most pigs will graze a little, but it's like they'll chomp and then they'll destroy the rest of it afterwards. They'll eat the grass and then all the roots too. So we thought we'd start, kind of working towards a medium-sized pig that would graze and not destroy my fields. And then we stumbled upon IPPs, and that was kind of like, oh God, someone's already actually done all of the work for me. So yeah, you've got all these medium-sized breeds. Like you've got Kunis, which are a small breed. And they graze awesomely. Like they can do fantastic grazing like that. You've got your Ossabaw Islands that are okay. You've got your Mangalistas that are okay as far as grazing ability goes. Right? They'll do all right. They're not amazing. And then what is that? American Guinea Hogs. They're another grazing-ish type pig that they do pretty good about not destroying. They still can though. They can still get crazy. And a few IPP throwbacks will root and actually get after it, but not many. So, you've got those couple other ones, but all those have something that's really missing. And that's honestly just growth rate. So we wanted a pig that is still able to go to market at a reasonable size. So Mangalistas take 18 months to 2 years to get up to a butcher weight. That standard 250-ish pounds. That's insane. Like, how are you going to make money raising a hog that long? And then Kunis, that's another 2 years in order to get to that weight. And a lot of that winds up being fat. And then I don't know as much about the American Guinea Hogs. The Ossabaw Islands are also a pretty small breed. And they do root a little bit more than all those others I mentioned. But, they're also a little smaller. So we needed something that got to a good size so that it is still profitable to farm. Because that's the big kicker here is that, I'm sure all of us farm because we enjoy it to an extent, but we also need to make income off of doing this. So that's the biggest with that. We hit that 250-ish pounds in about 9 months, which is only a month and a half to 2 months longer than a standard hog. So
I'm kind of baiting you here a little bit, but also, didn't it seem like the IPP was more designed for the family farms, homesteads?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, that's a big part of the medium size. And personality being a huge one. So IPPs are not aggressive. If you have an aggressive IPP, then it needs to go to the processor. Plain and simple. I don't care how much you spent for it. If you've got an aggressive IPP, it needs to go. All of our IPPs, so we use any of our boars we've had with other breeds, I could trust about as far as I could throw them. And I couldn't throw an IPP, let alone throw one of our old standard hogs. It was about 800 to 900 pounds in a full-grown hog. So I couldn't trust them. They're massive. My wife was always terrified of going in there because she's just especially with our boar. With our boar, it was our old red wattle boar he was about 800 pounds when we processed him, and you couldn't get within 10 feet of him. So we have had, I think I'm now at 6 different IPP boars, maybe 7, that are full-grown adult IPP boars. They'll cap out about 450, 500 pounds, and they will all flop on their backs for belly scratches. They're all as docile as a dog. I mean, it is the most laughable thing for somebody to come out, and they got kids. We don't do farm tours, but when people pick up their piglets, of course they're going to be here, and I want to show them around the farm. We just don't have time to schedule stuff with our hectic life schedules for individual farm tours. But they're worried with their kids. They're like, oh my gosh, be careful with that pig, which I definitely would have been with our old breeds because they nip. But with these guys, I mean, honestly, kids will go out there and just stand and scratch and love all over these pigs, and they're totally fine. They can be a little pushy, but they're a lot heavier than you are. So
Yeah.
they just tend to do that, and they'll get a good scratch in. But they're not aggressive about it, like a lot of other breeds we've dealt with. So.
And one of the things I'm still baiting you a little bit here. What about the quality of meat?
Yeah. So I actually just had a customer message me about this the other day, because we finally got a USDA processor within an hour of us, and he'd cooked one of the ham chops, and or ham steaks, and he was like, "This tastes a lot like beef. Does it all taste like beef?" And we process steers, so we raise a few steers, and honestly, in the freezer, like if it didn't say pork and beef, sometimes I'm a little concerned, like which one did I grab? And I definitely like our pork drastically more than I like our beef, and our beef is fine. I just like our pork way more. The fat quality and the flavor of it is just so much better. But that's just pork, But it really does taste like a really nice grass-finished beef. There's awesome marbling, deep red meat. That's the biggest kicker that most people, when I look in my freezer and I'm like, okay, which one is that? Is the meat is so red. It looks like a beef steak. So, I mean, it's not that it's not the other white meat, not even close. And pork shouldn't be. So
to bring that question in, and I'm talking about species a little bit, but is there a difference in, and I'm going to say the word castration for when I'm talking about male pigs? So a castrated male as opposed to butchering a female. Any difference in flavor?
There's no difference in flavor. The barrows will grow a little faster. So, which is why, we only, one of the reasons why, as a responsible breeder, you should really only sell castrated males to make sure that, one, right, your customer's getting the fastest growing, best pig that they can get. So, don't sell runts or anything like that. But barrows do grow a little bit faster. And then the other big kicker here is we don't want to sell unregistered stock. Like I said before, people will get attached. These pigs are so friendly and docile that I cannot tell you the amount of people that are like, that when we were first starting and didn't really realize all this kind of stuff, they'd be like, oh, well, we wound up deciding to breed her because we just fell in love. She's got such a friendly personality, and that is so easy to do, because they all do. It's like you walk out in the field of feeders with me, and every single one of them has an absolutely amazing personality.
Yep.
That's not, I mean, there are a few, if you watch our, we did a video on selecting which ones are breeder piglets and which ones are feeder piglets, doing a litter eval. And you'll see one in there where I'm picking him up and he's just screaming the whole time. Well, on and off screaming, to be honest. He doesn't even scream the whole time, but he's screaming on and off. And for me, that was okay, you're a feeder. That's it. That's not normal for an IPP. When I have customers pick up an IPP from us, a piglet, I'll pick up the piglet out of the crate and carry it out to their car, and the piglet is just chilling in your arms. And that was not something we could do with our old pigs. Our old pigs, we'd catch piglets, and they're just screaming bloody murder the entire way that you're carrying them, even if you're holding them like a dog. So when people with these are like, is there something wrong with that piglet? He's not making any noise. It's like, no, that's every one of these piglets should be that way. So,
and
hey, Todd.
What's the disadvantages of the meat of a pig that's not been has not been castrated?
So if you're looking at a boar, you mean?
Yeah.
So boars do produce two chemicals, skatole, and there may just be testosterone, but I feel like it's one other chemical that's produced. And that's what will cause that boar taint that we can get, which if you haven't raised pigs but you've deer hunted or even elk hunted,
Yep.
that buck taint smell, in a big mature buck, that's a lot what boar taint is like. And it's not pleasant, to be frank.
My Cooney Coon that I just did a couple of months back, yeah, he wasn't fixed, and the smell will make you gag.
Yeah, you can't
horrible.
Eat it. And not all pigs carry that gene. The gene to produce those chemicals in a quantity that makes that smell in the meat. I mean, it's the meat, it's the fat. All of it smells that way when you cook it. And even just when you taste that, like your butcher will be able to tell you. So anytime we accidentally have one that we have to deal with, or we have a cryptorchid that's retained one testicle, we just tell them like, hey, when you're processing, if it smells fine, then, you know, we'll go ahead and proceed normally. If it does not smell fine and you can smell that boar taint, just hunk it up for us as dog food, because that's all it'll be good for. You can't eat that. Like,
it's bad.
So yeah.
That was our first, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Yeah, and not all pigs carry it. So it's like Russian roulette. You never know. There is a test you can do, but the idea of the test, just like, it's fairly common for a lot of people, but for me, the idea of it is just like weird and gruesome. The test is this little like syringy plug thing, and you just right into the back of the pig's neck, and it will take out a little plug of tissue, and then you can go in and cook that. And if you smell the taint, you'll know the boar has boar taint. But for me, it's like
terrible.
The idea of cooking a piece of pig that's still alive, like, could not do that. Like, and I mean, it's very small. Like, it is. I don't want to make that sound like, you know, you're out there like Dwight from The Office with a big old cookie cutter taking a chunk out of a horse. Like, it is very, very tiny little, like, they're going to hurt themselves more scratching themselves on a fence. But the idea of it, I can't wrap my head around. So
yeah, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And by the way, for those that don't have IPPs or have never seen one before, I've been just throwing a few pictures up so you can actually see something. I'm showing mine because I don't have permission to use other people's pictures. So anyway, so every once in a while I'm going to put pictures up of IPPs so people can see what they look like. So by the way, this particular pig that is up on the screen is the one we butchered. We called him Mr. Cow, and his hanging weight, and I only think he was hardly 10 months old. His hanging weight was 260 pounds. And he filled up a freezer pretty darn good. So
yeah, that's one heck of a hanging weight.
Yeah, and then I got to watch the butchering, the whole thing, and talk about beautiful meat. Oh my gosh, I've never seen such beautiful meat. And I've been a deer hunter and all that stuff, and I've done all kinds of other animals. It was amazing. And I was very proud of just how well that pig looked, how healthy he was. Heart and lungs were great. And that was a beautiful pig. So, and I think the fact that it's just a great animal, and we gave it a good life. And so, it's nice and healthy. I really think raising an animal in a good environment helps too.
Rob, can I turn that back on you real quick? Because there's actually a question. Like, you know that I've got family up there in Oregon and around that whole area. So I'm up there once a year at least. Does yours taste any bit at all like the sage smells? Because that, for me, like, the idea of raising them up there, I love the smell of that sagebrush so much that, like, that would just be awesome.
I can tell you, when Sherry cooks the bacon, to me, I smell a little bit of a maple smell. I know it sounds weird, and it just smells adorable. I just love it. And so it's like when you're cooking bacon, it's like you get this touch of maple smell. I don't know what causes that. But and then the flavor along on top of that is just amazing, and it's the best bacon I have ever eaten. And we've only had one set of pork chops. I only butchered like a month and a half ago, but so far we've been just totally impressed. And so, there's no. I would have picked up the sage in it, but I don't think we're as heavy as sage as say other desert areas. I mean, we have sage, but I don't think it's strong enough to actually get incorporated in the meat. Like now, Steve Sparks, he's far more east of us in Oregon.
Okay.
I would imagine he would pick up a little bit of that sage. But I don't say that as a bad thing either. But
I debate it every time. I've got a few slabs of pork belly in the freezer, and I think next time we go out there, I'm gonna sneak back me a few branches of it just so I can use it to smoke some bacon. I love that smell. Yes. So,
gosh, I got so many questions here. But so, what would you say? Just make sure we're covering all the benefits. Have we covered? What do you think is all the benefits of the fact of why you should raise, and why eating an IPP or Idaho Pasture pigs is high in your list, personally. Mine too.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll never raise another breed of pig at this point. Like, if I ever decide to stop raising IPPs for any reason, that'll be the end of pigs for me, because there is no other breed of pig that comes even close to this. My fields look amazing, and that's a huge one. When we started out with IPPs, so our farm is only 6 acres, okay, and we only grazed like 4.5 acres of it, maybe 5, but I doubt even that. And when we started out, we had 250 head of laying hens, 10 dairy goats, 30 head of sheep, about 100 broiler chickens a year. We ran a 16 doe rabbitry. We do about 1,000 quail a year. All of this stuff rotating out through our pastures. And we do 1 to 2 bottle steers a year and a horse, all on this ground. And it's very important to us that we're not destroying the ground. Oh, sorry, and the other breeds of pig we had. And we would do about 8 or so feeders. And so it's really important to us that we're using our land in a way that's regenerative and improves it while also producing healthy food. Well, with those other pigs, it was not possible. We were trying to rotate through our fields, and these other pigs were just, I mean, from day one in a paddock, 3 of them, to, oh, we got to 8, it was horrible. Like 8, we were just having to dry a lot. Because they would destroy it in a day and just leave these huge potholes, grass that take, by the time we could rotate back to move the sheep in or the chickens in, it's just, you know, solid weeds, which there's nothing wrong with weeds. Weeds are just plants growing in a spot that I, for the most part, wish there was grass or something else growing. But we couldn't do that with those other breeds of pig. So we started we found the IPPs as a grazing pig, brought them out. And honestly, we now only do IPPs and Great Pyrenees. Everything else just began to kind of phase out of the farm. Actually, I mean, my wife's in the probably chuckling right now because I went on crutches and she sold a bunch of stuff because I had the farm being too crazy. But yeah, these pigs graze and keep our fields looking nice. People come out and they ask if I still have sheep because that's what it looks like out there, or they don't think I have anything anymore. Because honestly, my grass gets tall. We'll do anywhere from a 3 to 8 week rest on a paddock. And out here in Missouri, grass grows like crazy. So in the process of 4 weeks or so, I'll have grass that's knee high. And, you know, some of the pigs are just hiding that tall grass. But the fact that I can still have all that grass and I'll run them in there for 10 days and then move, or 7 preferably. I like to move on Sundays. Then there's still tons of grass in there. Honestly, I probably need more animals, even for the amount of space that we have. And we're, at any given time, I've got between 15 and, God, when I have litters, 100 pigs on 4.5 acres. And it doesn't look like it. And if it smells like manure, like you get people that joke, they're like, oh gosh, well, you've got a right plant. Yes, I agree, Elijah. Yeah. There's no such thing as a weed. It's just a plant that is attempting to serve a purpose. Even if it's not the purpose we want, it's, yeah. But
so I have a question for you. I had to keep this rolling. Sorry.
I do too.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll get distracted. We talked once.
With rooting, I agree with you that they don't root very heavily. However, it seems like they rooted heavy as young piglets for a while. And
yeah, so young piglets
Sparks,
really do need mineral.
Yeah, and he suggested mineral, so I use Next Gen. I think it helped a little bit, but
you got to catch up. It's a long process.
When they got older, they kind of refrained from it. So I'm kind of asking this question for Debbie because she's going to be taking care of the 3 pigs for Aimee and herself, and so now we don't have to worry about grass. They're high desert like we are, and I'm going to get to diet here in a minute. But I did notice that when they were younger, say their first 4 months, they were pretty good little diggers. And then I talked to Steve and I said, what's going on here? And he goes, minerals. So I started introducing minerals. And so it did seem to get a lot better over time. Yeah. But the older they got, the less that they rooted.
Yeah, so the big kicker on minerals is that and it's one of the other huge, amazing factors of IPPs that I don't know how I haven't touched on yet. IPPs will eat half the amount of grain as a standard hog. So we used to feed 7 to 8 pounds per head per day as a daily ration for a grow-out hog, and about 5 to 6 as a maintenance ration for our sows. IPPs will eat anywhere from, depending on your grass quality, whether or not you're feeding fodder and other things, but anywhere from as low as 1 pound. That's what Jody feeds, but she also feeds a lot of fodder to make up for that. Up to what's pretty standard is 3.5 pounds per head per day.
What is
Now,
fodder?
The fodder is sprouted wheat, barley, or those are usually the ones that most people will do. But you're just sprouting that grain up to about 4 to 6 inches, and then it will actually pull out as a whole mat. And so you've got this like 1 to 2 inch layer of grain at the bottom that's all sprouted, and then the grass tops. And it's a great way to produce, like for you guys, it'd be fantastic. For us, I can never justify it because we grow grass so fast and so easy. We started a system during drought a few years back, and then as soon as grass started growing again, it seemed pointless. But if you don't have a lot of grass, it is an amazing resource to get a lot of that nice green leafy material in them.
So my next question real quick is, would you feed your pigs, say you lived in our area, alfalfa or just hay?
You guys do grow a lot of alfalfa up in there with all those irrigated fields. Yeah, and the pigs really like it. Alfalfa is just expensive, right? It is high in protein, so it's a great feed source for that. Anytime I've had real big issues and I don't want to start up a fodder system, we're in a bad drought, which we haven't really had any issues with that here in the last couple of years, which I just blame on our regen ag practices. But we would do alfalfa pellets. We always do grass hay anyways. And if my hay guy has a good deal for me on alfalfa grass mix, I'll jump on it just for the benefit. But I know that about 50% of that bale's probably, because we buy big round bales, I know it's going to get used as bedding. They'll love to pull pieces down and drag it off to their shelters. Kirsten Boyer's made some really awesome hay feeders that she's posted on the groups before to try to stop some of that. Me, I don't care. I just take the big round bale and set it out there. So if you're buying something like alfalfa to feed them, which would be great, it really would. If you have that option and it's not too expensive of an option for you, I would suggest that route. Okay. But you don't have to. I feed grass hay, and it's fine. But to make sure I don't lose that point on the... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. We're getting ready here at our farm. We're getting ready to do the sprouted fodder systems.
Awesome.
So Debbie, we can talk about that too, and for our triplets. But I like that you mentioned that because we're getting ready to set up that system because we moved from somewhere with grass. There's no grass here, so.
No.
Yeah, well,
really
Amy, I've already started it. I just didn't know it was called that.
Okay.
And when I was at your house,
we'll get together. I didn't know what it's called. I went and bought, I think it was 25 pounds of barley.
Okay.
And I started doing it already, but I didn't know what it was called.
Yeah.
There are 1,000 Facebook pages for it, so join some of those groups.
And since somebody knows how to do hydroponics, we can actually take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
So.
Which would be super helpful because one of the biggest things I regretted about our fodder system was we didn't have it was a recirculating system. So it had a big tub at the bottom, and then the water would pump up, and then it would filter through all of the trays until it reached the bottom. And then it was on a timer to run every 4 to 6 hours and run again and run again. But all of those starches and sugars that are produced and leached out of that, when that just collects in a tub, that's a great source for bacteria to grow, and it smelled awful.
Yeah, I tried that.
We didn't have a good way to empty it. Yeah, we didn't have a good way to empty those tubs, and I wish I had figured something out because it was in our office, which is where I'm at now. So I was like, oh no. And then I had to bucket water from the kitchen to fill it up. And,
Mine was in the bathtub. But
that's a pretty common way to do it. Yeah.
I came across the same problem. So I don't use the pump system. I just go out there and water them 3 or 4 times a day. Okay.
Yeah. In the summer, you totally can. And you're totally fine. Awesome. But to make sure I don't lose that back on that mineral topic for Rob there, because it is a super important big deal in the IPP community. Like I said, you're only feeding about half the amount of grain ration, so a formulated grain ration for pigs, to your IPPs. So, when people that are feed analysts, and nutritionists are making those rations, they put the amount of mineral in that feed that they're assuming you're going to feed about 7 to 8 pounds per head per day for a grower ration. You're only feeding 3.5 pounds of it. So you have cut their mineral intake in half. You didn't mean to, but you did. The pigs can get most of what they need from either the hay or the fodder or the great pasture that you're putting them out on, as long as you have a good mix of pasture forages, which is why those weeds are so important. Weeds do pull up different minerals and nutrients from the soil profile than just grass. And so they'll graze around on that stuff. But unless you have a really, really, really healthy system that is built up over years to get to that point, it's taken us forever to get there, and us essentially just overdosing mineral for a while, you're going to need to feed mineral. So you're going to need to essentially meet that other half that ration's worth of mineral, especially for growing piglets. Growing piglets are obviously... so most people in the breed, and there are a few crazy people, like we've just kind of got lucky and worked our systems where we don't really feed mineral much anymore, but most people will feed about 100 pounds of mineral per 1,000 pounds of feed, which is still drastically cheaper than buying that full amount of feed. Mineral's like $20-30 a bag, and feed is obviously drastically more than that over a course of 1,000 pounds of feed. So most people, you'll go through that 100 pounds per 1,000 pounds of feed, and that'll be their whole life. Like as long as that pig is growing, you'll do that. For us, honestly, we have built up our soil profile to the point where we have so much mineral going. I need to do some soil tests to see if I'm not just crazy here, but we stopped giving mineral a few years back in those quantities, and we've been fine. Our fields still look great. Nobody's rooting. Nobody's going crazy. Even our piglets aren't rooting or going crazy. Once in a blue moon, I buy about 2 bags of mineral a year for all the IPPs we do. And it's just if I'm ever like, oh, okay, so I've got some new fresh piglets, I'll give them a dose of mineral once or twice. Like I'll just take a little bit in the bottom of a coffee can and dump it out there in a line for them. If I've got lactating sows that seem like they're losing condition, I'll go ahead and give them a little bit of extra mineral. If I ever notice anybody rooting in a spot, turning over a little bit of an area, that I'm like, I'm pretty sure I fed some mineral there in a spot to a sow or something, I'll go ahead and mix some in with their feed to make sure I'm touching that up. But it's so minuscule at this point for us that it's not a big deal. But for most standard people, especially if you've never had IPPs or other pigs or other stock on your farm, so you haven't been feeding mineral, for us, I think it's the fact that we've raised so many types of animals on such a small area that did need mineral, right? Sheeps need a decent amount of mineral. Sheep and goats both need a decent amount of mineral to maintain their condition. So we were feeding a lot of that. Chickens, they poop out a lot of that different stuff. We throw back out eggshells, so they're dumping out a bunch of calcium and phosphorus. So like a lot of these different things that I think has built us up to this point, and because we did that first year or two with IPPs, giving the standard mineral ration, we've built up a mineral component in our soil, and we allow weeds to grow, so it's not as big of an issue for us. But anybody just starting out, buy yourself a good mineral, a good hog mineral. Honestly, you can ask your feed mill what mineral is in the feed you're buying, and just get a bag of that, and you should be okay. Double check that your zone isn't deficient in something. A lot of parts of the country are deficient in selenium, and so that can be a big one that pigs go looking for. But yeah, if you're in Missouri, I recommend the Super 10 mineral. It's a cattle mineral, and it works great. A lot of people love that Kent's mineral that Rob was talking about. He's now using. There are a few other popular ones that are nationwide that people can manage to track down. So
quick question on, because the nature of our area or our region. And guys, I am going to go over our time slot, so that's intentional. So since really, I actually have some grass area in my paddock areas, but it's really minimal. But I'm just saying, is it a good idea to constantly have at least grass hay in your paddocks on a regular basis, so it kind of fills in that gap of grazing?
So that for half the country, no. For your half, yes.
Yeah.
So for IVBs, you want to always have forage in front of them at some time, because that 3.5 pounds of grain, right? That's assuming that they're making up the rest of that ration that you would normally be feeding. You know, like I said, for a normal hog, you're going to be feeding that 7-ish to 8 whatever pounds of grain, and we're cutting it in half. So the IPPs need to be getting that remaining portion from forage, and they will. They'll do a great job of grazing and getting all the rest of that nutrition that they need from that. Not all of it, right? They do still need, lysine and decent bulk amounts of carbohydrates and proteins that they can't really get from grass, but they can get a lot of the other stuff they need. And not just grass, of course, right? Grass and forbs and everything else growing out in the field. But if you don't have grass for them to graze on, and a nice diverse stand of grass, not just fescue like a lot of us have, then yeah, put out that hay. They need to always either have good quality hay, or you could do like alfalfa pellets, or grass. So grass, hay, or some type of range QB alfalfa pellety thing to make up that other amount of forage in their diet that they need.
Okay. Let's talk about
for you guys.
here.
Yeah, you're pretty much like.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to also switch over to climates a little bit. For IPPs,
yeah.
Is there a preference? Like, are they hardy enough for cold weather areas? Are they hardy enough for hot weather?
I believe there are a few in Canada. People have been working on that one pretty hardcore, and I know the process is super complicated, so it may not have happened yet. But a lot of Canadians keep asking for them. So I think somebody may have pulled it off by now. You could probably check some of the Facebook groups. I get a message at least once a month from a Canadian asking on the website about it. So, and somebody posts in the Facebook groups pretty regular asking for it. But I know there are tons of breeders up there in Montana and South Dakota and Wisconsin and Minnesota, and they're dealing with massive amounts of snow and just horrible temperatures. I hate the cold, so like some of the things I see people still have pigs in out there. I mean, like this much of the head of their pig trundling through snow is like all you see, and they're fine. There are breeders up there that just with A-frames have piglets out in that much snow like it's no big deal.
My kids
and then on the flip side of that, I couldn't either. Oh my God, no. Like we get maybe like last year we had a terrible year and we got like 8 inches of snow. And I was just like, what in the world? I need to move further south. But on the flip side of that, there are breeders down in Texas. Texas is actually, shout out to Texas down there for whatever reason. Texas is the state with the most members in the association right now. I don't know why, but y'all just keep signing up, and I appreciate you. But so there are tons of breeders down there, and so they're handling the heat there. There's actually somebody just shipped some down to Hawaii, so there are IPPs down in Hawaii.
Wow,
the temperatures down there just now fine. So like these guys can handle pretty much whatever you throw at them. Of course, within reason. Like make sure that if you're in cold temperatures, you have a nice dry shelter. Those A-frames are fantastic because they'll radiate the heat back down versus, the big Quonset huts, they're fine. And I run a bunch of those, but they don't radiate or retain the heat as much as, 3/4 inches of plywood in a triangle to keep that heat down on them. And then if you're in hot temperatures, pigs don't sweat. And they don't like temperatures above 80 degrees. So if it hits 80 degrees, they need to have a wallow. They need to have somewhere to keep cool. So as long as you give them some shade, give them a wallow, they'll handle most heat. I did lose a pig to heat stroke this summer, but it was my fault. I put him out with a lady on a 104-degree day. It was early morning. Thought we were fine. So they can get worked up, and there's usually a real sad story at least once or twice a year of somebody losing one to heat stroke. But I'm part of a lot of other pig groups, and that's not just an IPP thing. There's throughout the summer, it seems like once a month, there's somebody in any pig group saying they lost a pig to heat stroke. So pigs just don't handle heat as well as some other animals if you don't keep up on a wallow and shade.
On IPPs, I'm switching the subject a little bit. Do all IPP pigs have spots, or can some be solid color? Can some have stripes?
Yeah, so that's like one of the crazy things about IPPs at the moment, and I don't foresee it changing anytime in the future. There is a large assortment of colors associated with IPPs. At the moment, there's technically there is a formal list of what colors are accepted, but I've seen that list change in the time period we've been here. So I really don't think, like, as long as your pig is actually an IPP, there's really not any color that'll get it disqualified. So there is cream, which is really just a white pig, but they're really it isn't like white like you think of like a Yorkshire that's like blaringly white. It is like a cream color. And then there is ginger, which can be anywhere from a very, very light colored ginger up to a deep, deep red ginger. And then those gingers can also have black spots on them. And that can be anywhere from just a couple of little... Yeah, that's actually a ginger. That's not a cream. So I thought that was cream for the longest time because the other ginger is like red, like people ginger hair color red, like my beard, like as red as it goes. So I always thought I had never seen one of the real light creams because I don't feel like they were used to be that common when we first started out. Now there's been a few, and we had some born on our farm that was like, oh God, okay, that's cream.
Yeah. I got that. My boar came from Steve Sparks too.
Yeah. Does he have a cream?
I don't know, but he had that cream. No, I mean ginger. That ginger.
Yeah, yours is a ginger.
Yeah. Yes, yep. And so
it can be hard to tell for new people the difference. For me, sometimes.
When I saw that color, I'm going, I have got to have that boar.
Oh my God, yeah. We wanted for the longest time to get the deep colored one because our first IPP was a boar that was the light color like yours, and I kept seeing those deep red gingers, and I was like, oh, I want one of those so bad. And it wasn't until last year or the year before we finally got. Now we have two. But yeah, so you've got that cream color, that light ginger, the real dark ginger. You can have ginger with black spots. You can have brown and white, which usually fades to black. Like as a piglet, it often gets tagged as brown and white or just black and white, but it usually fades to black and white. I've not seen many adults that still look brown. It's never a solid brown. I've never seen a solid brown one. And honestly, I don't know that I've ever seen a solid black IPP. They tend to lean back on that Berkshire type coloration with the white and then the white feet and socks, and then usually some spots somewhere else. And then and some of them are real crazy.
Part, isn't it? Aren't those colors
all the crazy spots and those gingers, the light gingers, that's all from the Kuni for sure. The deep red ginger, I think, often comes from the Duroc side because Durocs are a real deep ginger. But Kunis will have every color under the sun, too. So, yeah.
That's a live camera. Unfortunately, I got to get a little
and that is what. So when you have piglets and their ears look like they've been mauled, that's why.
Yeah.
Because they have sharp little needle teeth, and they'll just bite and harass each other with them.
I will be asking a question about wattles in a minute, but I want to talk about companionships. Yeah. For example, I've got a boar Sparky, which is my boar, and I separated him from all his girlfriends. He's by himself. Is it better? Have you heard, in our opinion, whether a pig should always have some kind of companion? For example, I'm thinking about giving one of my my males that's been fixed to be a companion with Sparky. Is that kind of a healthy thing to do?
Yeah, so that's very common. It's very healthy. So pigs are a social animal. So honestly, we separate our boars too, and when we only have an individual boar, or we have to run a quarantine yard. Anytime you get a new pig, you should quarantine it for 30 days from the rest of your animals, just to make sure if they've got something, it's out of their system by the time it goes to join the rest of your pigs. But during that quarantine period, they do get a little depressed, so it is nice to go out there and give them some love, remind them that they're not alone.
Definitely.
Make sure they are well away from your other pigs, not just because, you definitely don't want nose-to-nose. That defeats the entire purpose of quarantine. And you don't want to, wear the same rubber boots to go feed your quarantine pigs, or at least not walk in the paddock with them, that you're then going to go do with the rest of your pigs. But if you're going to be out there loving and scratching on them, go wash your hands first. Maybe change clothes. Depends on how strict you are. But yeah, if they can have a friend, not the quarantine pigs, they're just kind of on their own for 30 days. But other IPPs, yeah, or pigs in general, honestly, I hate when people try to buy a single barrow off me, because that pig is going to have a really crummy life. For our boars, what we'll do is, if I have to have a single boar, usually I've got a barrow somewhere that was like a crypt orchid or was a runt or something like that. I don't often have crypt orchids. I had one last year, maybe this year. Yeah, this year too. So sometimes that happens, and it's just in a spot you can't get to it. So if I've got a barrow hanging around, I'll give it to him to hang out with, so that they're both nice and fresh. I mean, the barrow doesn't care, because the barrow just hang out with all the gilts feeders and be fine. But the boar will get lonely. When we have multiple boars, and this is kind of a contentious thing, there are a lot of breeders that successfully do it, but you kind of have to have a gut of steel, I feel like, to get over it at first. You can keep boars together, but they will fight. So, and it, when you put sows back together after they've been, so Rob, you've got your sow separated to have piglets right now, right?
Right.
So when you put them back together, they're going to fight. And it is going to be, if they don't, let me know, because that will be amazing. I have almost never seen that. Pretty much every time I put my sows back together, they fight, and it is rough looking. And it lasts a day, maybe, that they're at each other. They're just trying to establish dominance and figure out who's top of the pecking order. And the boars will do the same thing, but your boars are larger, and your boars have tusks.
Yeah.
And they have a little bit more at stake. Honestly, I feel like most of the time, my sows are more, they're more of a pain in the butt when it comes to deciding on social hierarchy than my boars. So my boars, sometimes they'll get after it for 20, 30 minutes when they first back together. If there's a good size discrepancy, it'll go fast, and the fight is nothing. The smaller one will run away, and they know that they're not there. But if they're real close to size, it's...
But a barrow probably wouldn't have that problem.
He'll give up, yeah. Unless he's just one of those ones with a personality that just wants to butt heads. Yeah. Normally, a barrow knows he's bested and will just give up.
Interesting.
But they don't have testosterone running through.
Because I want to put a barrow with Sparky just for companionship.
Yeah.
And so it sounds
for
like
the most part, those barrows will just docile down and be like, "No, you win."
Cool.
It's not worth it. Your boar will run him out of the way a bit, as he's trying to assert and expect some humping. But yeah.
Interesting. I'm not going to go too much longer here. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So what if you put the two fences close to each other before you put them together? Would that minimize some of that fighting?
Make sure your electric fence is very hot.
Oh.
They will fight through a fence. And I have ruined many fences that way. So you definitely can. But if it's a woven wire or hog panel fence, put up an electric offset. And if it's netting, God, I know some people do just the netting. And I know Steve or Rob, you do the netting. And the netting terrifies me. I've had lambs get stuck in the electro netting before, so I'm always real. I hate the netting. I know it works great for some folks. I've had some terrible memories of it, and I worry about pigs trying to fight through it and getting tangled up in it, and me attempting to untangle an angry pig being attacked by another angry pig. So yeah,
probably not a good idea.
We never put our paddocks next to each other. They're hundreds of feet away from each other. So
yeah.
we don't even have that issue. If they've got
that electric offset, because so what we do is we do woven wire or a hog panel, and for our farrowing yards we don't do an electric offset, and they're usually fine after about a day. They'll pace the fence with each other and just go after it. Most of the time for our sows going into farrowing yards, they were in one group and then got split into the little pins, and so they're fine. They're used to being around each other. It's when I because we run two separate breeding groups because we have two different boars. It's when pigs that were in different breeding groups go fence to fence that they just up and down the fence with each other and chuff and try to fight each other through the fence. That's when you have issues. the hog panels usually hold up pretty good, but I have destroyed a hog panel or two that way. With the electric offset wire, they don't, because they get shocked when they get too close, and then they just get mad and they go and sulk. And that works pretty good. Or they just stand there and stare at each other. And you get a loud chuffing.
I have an older pig that's going on 11 months old, and I'm bringing in these babies.
Yep.
So how would I introduce them so the bigger one doesn't hurt the babies? Right now, I have a divider in between.
So he won't. He may like pester them, but for the most part, a bigger pig won't really mess with the small pigs because it knows it's in charge. There's no contest. If your pigs are roughly the same size, and I mean roughly, like for adults, you're talking like 100 pounds difference is roughly the same size as far as they're concerned.
Right.
It'll depend on the pig, but that's close enough for them that they're like, I don't know, I may have a shot. I could be in charge. And I do, like I had for a while in some herd groups, I'll have one of my smaller sows will be top matriarch. And then you throw one of the other gals that's always matriarch in there and she immediately does it. But usually if you have a larger pig, they're usually fine. He may run them around a little at first, so keep them in a tight pen.
Female.
A female? Okay, well, like I said, sometimes my females are worse than my boys, but she'll probably be okay. She may pester them some, either have multiple feed pans, for sure.
I do.
Because if there's feed, she'll run them off the feed all day long and they'll never get to eat. But if you got multiple feed pans, you'll be okay. And I like to do at least, if I'm throwing new groups together, so I don't always do feed pans because sometimes it's not economical. Like I'm not going to have 20 feed pans out there for feeders, or even for my sows and boars. If it's a small group, I'll use feed pans because I hate feeding on the ground where I don't have to. You wind up wasting some feed. They dig through the grass trying to get all the feed that you missed. But if I have a large group, or for my breeder groups, make at least one more pile more of feed than you have of pigs out there, because somebody else's toy is always more interesting than your own toy. Yeah. So I will literally watch all of them out there. When I got the field, I've got 5 out in one paddock right now, and I have to make at least 6 piles because it's like pig roulette or musical chairs. They are just like moving from pile to pile, and the dominant sow is just pushing the other ones off, working their way down the line, and then working their way back down the line. And everybody's just having to shuffle. They always want to know, what are they eating? It's the same thing you're eating. Just stay in one spot and burn so many calories here.
So, Aimee, I know your time's getting short, so I'm going to wrap this up pretty quick. But I do have a question about runts. What do you typically do with a runt in a litter?
I keep it myself. I will not sell a runt. So we'll retain it back and feed it out. If you are raising IPPs, then as breeders, then you're feeding out pigs every year, okay? Because you're always feeding back your gilts anyways that didn't meet breed standard. So if it's a boar, castrate it. It's now a barrow because it's a runt. It's obviously not one we want as breed standard. No matter how pretty it looks to phenotype beyond size, it still is not. If it's too small, it's not okay. And then just feed it out like the rest of yours. It will take drastically longer, but usually those runts will still reach a size that is worth processing. It just may take a year and a half to get there. It still will taste great. So,
I'm not worried about that part. But my second batch here, I got a little pig that's like half the size of all the others. Just teeny little thing.
It happens. Once in a blue moon, they'll throw back. I think that it's a throwback to Coonies, but honestly, when we raised our Duroc and we had a Duroc boar. Well, he was supposed to be red wattle, but he had no wattles, so I think he was a Duroc, and I got gypped. But that's an aside. We had him and our Yorkshire Berkshire cross sows. We'd always wind up with a couple like that every year. So I don't necessarily buy into as much of it's such a Cooney throwback that's an IPP only thing, because we had it with standard dogs too. So, but they'll grow up just normal.
And then my last question for the show is, what is, and I'm sure this is an opinion on different farms, but what's the ideal grow out time to butcher your pigs? Is it 8, 10, or 12 months?
About
Preference?
9-ish months.
About 9?
Why
And I agree
So
with you,
most
'cause
people will say 8 to 10. I like to settle for 9, and then I'll set my processing appointments, mind you, for 8, 9, and 10, and just split my group among those. So when I go out to the field, I'll sort off the biggest each time. And then because we're raising only gilts that didn't meet breed standard for some reason or other, and runs. So I've usually got a bit more I mean, even then with that, I'm still pretty consistent out in the field, but I can usually see one that's like, that's a little bigger, that's a little bigger. Let's go ahead and get them out, and then work my way through.
Gotcha. Good feedback. Any other questions you guys have come to mind?
Nope. I learned a lot.
So did I.
Yeah, great.
I do
You
every
didn't
day.
hit all
So
my
don't worry.
questions, but you hit on some. You kind of scraped on some of them, so I'm just going to go with that. Supplements, minerals, we did all that. I'm going to maybe ask one more question, but I know this would be controversial, and this is only our opinion. Your opinion has nothing to do with any other organization, but I'm going to say the word vaccines. Is there a preference? Is it good to do vaccines? Is it preferable? Is it different
Rob,
in different
couldn't you have
regions?
chosen something that was like less controversial, like wattles? Like that one only starts like 5 or 6 arguments. You had to pick the one that starts all the arguments.
Let's leave that one alone then, because I think that's more of a personal preference for the breeders.
It's definitely personal.
So let's leave
I
it at that.
vaccinate. Okay. Yeah. I do vaccinate our pigs. Pig vaccinations are different than people ones, so
yeah.
whether you
And I wasn't
whatever
relating
way
those
on
two
that,
at all. I just wanted to. I had questions like if it had more to do with regions, like is it more advisable in the northwest, east, middle?
Not really. If you are in an area with a lot of other confinement operations or lots of people raising pigs, then I would be amazed if you found a way to get away with not doing it.
I agree.
If you've got people that just raise a bunch of pigs, like, and it's not an if, it's a when, to be honest. And most vets will tell you that, like, you can get away with it for years, especially if you have a small herd and they're really isolated. But eventually, birds carry it in. Like, that was a lot of the big issues that swine barns have. It's not from bringing pigs in and out. It's from a bird landing near an event. That was how they got swine flu in a bunch of those barns. Yeah. It just some bird dust blew in that happened to have swine flu on it. And that's in a super sterile environment. And we're out here in the sunshine with birds flying all over the place, putting up bird houses, encouraging it, and, like trying to pretend that, and not to mention that, we're driving to processing plants. Okay, this is a big one that I feel like most people don't touch on. You're driving to a processing plant, right? Yeah. And I know both of the processors I use, I drive through a trailer thing, okay? And then I open the door behind me and let my pig out into an area that has got poop all over the ground from any number of pigs, cattle, sheep that I just drove my tires through. And then I drive my trailer back to my farm and park it on my farm.
Yeah.
I cannot think of a worse biosecurity issue than that. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm a wonderful person and spray my tires off every time. Like, I do not.
And I
really should.
I'm actually
but I don't.
glad we touched just that far. I do want to talk to you one-on-one about that subject.
I'd love to.
And I'll make my decisions on my preferences based there. I'm sure people out there have their preferences, and we'll respect that. But anyway, I got to wrap this up because I only usually go an hour. But this is, I think, is such an informative show about IPPs that I think we covered a lot of really good questions here as far as beginning and duration. I think I wanted to make sure we covered your guys' questions about feed, care, things like that. Is there anything that you guys are getting 3 new pigs? Any big concerns as far as caretaking of them?
No, I'm just relying on you. I'll call you all the time.
And I just call.
And that's the way it should work. Go to your breeder. Your breeder should always be there for you. And if you are a breeder, be there for your customers. I got to tell you, only like 25% of my customers ever maintain contact. And I harass them all the time with like, up till then, like, remember to send me questions if you've got them. And I send out like I think our frequently asked questions sheet is up to like 12 pages now. But like, that goes out to everybody. It's up on our website, so anybody can grab it because I got tired of just emailing it individually to people. But even with that, like, I have so few, and we do a 12-month replacement guarantee. If the pig doesn't meet breed standard at 12 months old, I'll replace it for the cost of a feeder. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's what you bought from me at that point. And I still have customers that like I never hear from again. And it's like I'm here. I'll answer any question you got. I'm really responsive. Sometimes it takes me a day or two because I'm busy. But...
What?
That's not happening. You will hear from us.
Yeah.
I hear from you almost every day anyway.
I know it. Exactly. It's not happening.
Yep, that's not a problem. That's actually, we
That's
enjoy
our
that.
little community.
Yep.
That's perfect.
So yeah, it's very exciting. Those two getting their first pigs, and then hopefully they might become breeders in the future. But,
they will become addicted. It's hard not to.
I won't do Cooney Coons again. I love them to death, but it's just not worth it.
No, financially, it's not a feasible. And I could go on a huge thing about that. That's how Rob and I really got to talking, was the finances of doing a sustainable operation.
So what I wanted to do, I kind of avoided that question a little bit on this show, but I'd like to bring you back in a month or so, and we'll just talk about the business aspect of not only just pigs, but livestock in general, of his observations and some of the things you've learned about good business practices. And I'm talking about profit margins, all those kind of things. He's got
small
some
farms
really
need to be profitable, or you're not going to do it.
We were on the phone for over an hour with Sherry and I, cranking numbers, and we learned a lot.
Conversation.
And I think it's a conversation we should have on this. I think a lot of people would learn from it. So anyway, guys, I need to remind everybody real quick is when we go offline, don't close out your screen, and then we'll just close out the show. So it's kind of an internet thing. So guys, I want to wrap up the show here. I want to thank Caleb very much for being on the show today, answering all of our questions, and of course our hosts. You guys got great stuff. You guys didn't get to talk much, but we all wanted to listen. I can tell you that for sure. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching the show. Thank you, Caleb, for being on the show with us. We're going to bring him back with business questions next time, and if that's all right with you.
Absolutely. Always happy to talk.
I think it'd be kind of neat just to talk about the business aspect and just focus on that. So that'll be good, because that applies to not only pigs, but livestock and everything else we do. So, so anyway, guys, thank you very much for being on the show, and everybody's watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye now. Thank you very much for watching our video. Please take the time to like, subscribe, and share our videos all over the whole wide world. Thanks.